Sham Sharadava Nalalida Loka Tranaya Karuna Gana Ganatam Sham Sharadava Nalalida Loka Tranaya Karuna Gana Ganatam Prapta Sakalyana Gunanavasya Bande Gurashi Charanaravrindam Tatasam Bande Gurashi Charana Bande Gurashi Charanaravrindam Bande Gurashi Charanaravrindam Charanaravrindam Bande Gurashi Charanaravrindam Mahaprabhu Kirtanamrita Gita Vaditra Madhyam Manasurasenam Romanchakam pasru taranga vajo Bande Gurashi Charanaravrindam Shri Vigrahara Dana Nityanana Shingaratanama Niramajanado Juktasya Bhaktamsya Niyunjatapi Vande Gurashi Charanaravrindam Chaturvidhashi Bhagavat Prasada Satana Triptan Hari Bhakta Sangam Chaturvidhashi Satana Triptan Kridaiva Triptin Bhajata Shadeva Vande Gurashi Charanaravrindam Shiradikama Vavayarapara Madhurya Leela Gunarupanamna Shiradikama Pratikshana sa Danalalupasa Vande Gurashi Charanaravrindam Vande Gurashi Nekunjayono Ratikeri Sidhai Jajalibhir Yukti Apekshaneya Nekunjayono Ratikeri Sidhai Jajalibhir Tatratidaksha Ativalavasya Vande Gurashi Charanaravrindam Sakshadharidena Shamasta Shastri Ruktastatthava Vyataiva Sadhuvi. Kintu pravarja priya eva tasya Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam. Yasya prasada Bhagavat prasada Yasya prasadam nagati kutapi. Yasya prasadam Bhagavat prasadam Yasya prasadam Dayam stuvam tasya Yasya trinsandhyam Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam. Dhyayam stuvam tasya yasatrin sandhyam Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Saminitina Mine Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Namaste Sarasvate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunavadi Pachatari Shatarine. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Nityananda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Nityananda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Rama, Rama Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Hariyaraye Namah, Krishna Jadavaye Namah, Jadavaye Madhavaya Keshavaya Namah, Gopal Govindaram Shri Madhusudan, Giridhari Gopinath Madana Mohan, Shri Chaitanya Nityananda Shri Advaita Sita, Hari Guru Vaishnava Bhagavata Gita, Shri Rupa Sanatan Bhattaraguna, Shri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Dasaraguna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Shri Shri Radha Nila Madhava Radha Nila Madhava Radhe. Jayo Jagannath Jayo Baladeva Jayo Subhadrama Jayo Sudarshan Chakra. Jaya Sitaram Jayo Sitaram Jayo Sitaram Jayo Lakshman Hanuman. Nitai Gaura Haribo 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 Nitai Gaura Haribo 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 Nitai Gaura Pramanande. Jai Vishnu Paramansa Prabhajakacharya Suttara Sarvishima Grace Avocharavina Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON Pratishta Viviti Samstapaka Char Vaishnav Siramani Patita Pavana Srila Prabhupada Ji Maharaj Ki Jai. Shri Gaurya Guru Varga Patita Udhar Ki Jai. Shri Rupa Sanatana Bhatta Raghunatha Shri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Dasa Guna Sat Goswami Prabhu's Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ji Ki Jai. Ananta Kuri Vishnu Vrindi Ki Jai. Prem Sikh Ho Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhakta Vrindi Ki Jai. जय परम दयाल श्री नित्यानंद प्रभु की जय. जय प्रेम नाम संकीर्तन के जनक प्रेम पुरुषोत्तम श्री सच्चिदानंद स्मरण गौरंग चैतन्य महाप्रभु गौर हरि महावृनय अवतार की जय. गोलोकेर प्रमधान हरि नाम संकीर्तन जग की जय. जुग धर्म हरे कृष्ण महामंत्र की जय. बृहद निदांग ट्रांसडेंटल बुक डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन सेवा की जय. श्री श्री राधा कृष्ण गोप गोपनाथ राधा कुंद समकुंद गिरिराज गोवर्धन की जय. श्री ब्रज वृंदावन मथुर धाम की जय. तिलोस विशेष श्री राधा नील माधव की जय. श्री मय पूर्णवद्वीप एक चक्र धाम की जय. परम करुण श्री गौर निताय की जय. श्री पुरुषोत्तम क्षेत्र जगन्नाथपुरी धाम की जय. श्री श्री जगन्नाथ स्वामी बलदेव प्रभु स्मृत देवी सुदर्शन चक्र भगवान की जय. भक्ति सर्व विघ्न विनाशन कर सिंहरे भगवान की जय. जय गंगा माय जमुना माय की जय. तुलसी महारानी वृंद देवी भक्ति देवी की जय. श्री मथुरा धारानी की जय. समवेत भक्त बिंद की जय. निताय गौर हरि प्रमानंदे हरि बोल. All glories to the assembly bodies. All glories to the assembly bodies. All glories to the assembly bodies. All glories, glories, glories. You need it to work? Yeah.
Namaste Narasimhaya. Praladalaine Hiranyakasipur Bhakshasa Shilatankanakalaye Ito Narsimha Parato Narsimha Yato Yato Yami Tato Narsimha Pahe Narsimha Rodaye E Narsimha नरसिंहदिं शरणं प्रपद्ये तव करकमलवरेणाका अद्भुतशृङ्गा दलिता हिरण्यकाशिपू तनुभृङ्गा केशवधृता नरहरिरूप जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे केशवधृता नरहरिरूपा जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे जय नरसिंहदेव जय नरसिंहदेव जय नरसिंहदेव जय नरसिंहदेव जय प्रहलाद महाराज जय प्रहलाद महाराज जय प्रहलाद महाराज जय प्रहलाद महाराज
श्री भक्ति परसर विघ्नाशना करि सिंह भगवान की जय जय भक्त श्रेष्ठ प्रहलाद महाराज जय बोल हरि प्रमानंदे हरि हरि बोल श्री वृंदाय तुलसी वाय प्रिय भक्ति प्राविणे कृष्ण भक्ति प्राविणे तुलसी विष्णु भक्ति प्राविणे जय श्रीमती तुलसी महारानी वृंदारी
नमो नमः तुलसी कृष्ण प्रेयसी नमो नमः। भज राधा कृष्ण सेवा पावो यही अभिलाषी। और ये तुम्हारा शरण लो तारा वांछा पूर्ण हो। कृपा कोरि करो तारे वृंदावन वासी। मोर ये अभिलाष विलास कुंज दियो वास। नयनेरी बो सदा युगल रूप राशि। निवेदन धरो सखीर अनुगत करो। ए निवेदन धरो सखीर अनुगत करो। सेवाधिकार दिए करो निरदासी। दीन कृष्ण दास कोई ये न मोर होय। श्री राधा गोविंद प्रेम सदा ये नवासी। श्री राधा गोविंद प्रेम सदा ये नवासी। यानि कानि च पापानि ब्रह्महत्यादिकानि च तानि तानि प्रणश्यन्ति प्रदक्षिण पदे पदे। Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama,
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Vrinde Devi, Jaya Vrinde Devi, Jaya Vrinde Devi, Jaya Vrinde Devi. Jaya Tulsi Maharani, Jaya Tulsi Maharani, Tulsi Maharani, Jaya Tulsi Maharani. Vrinda Devi Tulsi Maharani ki.
Vrindaye tulasi devaye, priyaye ke sarasata, Vishnu bhakti pradede, Shatavadaya. Jai Shrimati Tulasi Maharani Vrinda Devi Jai. Oh Tulasi, beloved Krishna, I bow before you again and again. My desire to obtain the service of Shira Krishna. Overtake shelter of his wishes fulfilled. Bestowing myself on him, you make him resident of Vrindavan. My desire is that he also give me a residence in pleasure groves of Sri Vrindavan Dham. And thus within my vision, I will always behold beautiful pastimes of Radha and Krishna. I beg you to make me a follower, carry damsels of virtue. Please give me the privilege of devotional service and make me your own mad servant. These very fallen and lowly servant Krishna praise. May I always swim in love, Shishi, Radha and Govinda, Shrimati Tulsi Maharani, Vrinda Devi ki jai. Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Sri Krishna Kam ki jai. Pratipadam Purnamrita Swadanam Sarvatmatnam Param Param Vijayate Shri Krishna Sankirtanam Nam Namakari Vaudha Nija Sarva Shaktis Tatra Pita Niyamita Shmarane Nakala Itadrisi Tava Kripaya Bhagavan Mamapi Durdhaivam Idrishamiya Janina Nuraga Trinadapi Sunichena Tarorapi Saishnuna Amanina Manadena Kirtaniya Sadahari Nadhanam Najanam Nasundarim Kavitam Vaya Jagadishaka Maye Mama Janmani Janmanishwari Bhavatar Bhakti Rahituki Tvai Ainandatanu Kinkaram Paritamam Vishame Bhavambudo Kripaya Tapapada Pankaja Stita Duli Sadrisham Vichintaya Nayanam Galora Shrudharaya Vadanam Garugadarudaya Gira Pulakairin Chitam Bapukada Tabanama Grahane Bhavisati Jugaitam Nimishena Chakrusha Prabhusha Itam Shunya Itam Jagata Sarvam Govinda Virahename Aslishva Padaratam Pinashtumam Adarshnar Marmahatam Karotuva Jatagadhava Vidadatulam Pato Matprana Natastu Saivana Paraha Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Sikhastakam Ki Jai Namo Mahavarannaya Krishna Prema Pradayati Krishna Krishna Chaitanya Namine Gauratvishe Namaha. Glory to the Shri Krishna Sankirtana, which cleanses the heart with the dust accumulated for years and extinguishes the fire of conditional life of repeated birth and death. This Sankirtan moment is the prime benediction for humanity at large, because it spreads the rays of the benediction moon. It is the life of all transcendental knowledge. It increases the ocean of transcendental bliss and enables us to fully taste the nectar for which we're always anxious. O my Lord, your holy name alone can render all benediction to living beings, and thus you have hundreds of millions of names like Krishna and Govinda. In these transcendental names you have invested with your transcendental energies. There are not hard and fast rules for chanting these names. O my Lord, out of kindness you enable us to easily approach you by your holy names, but I'm so unfortunate I have no attraction for them. Once we chant the holy name of the Lord in a humble state of mind, thinking oneself a lower and strolling street, one should be more tolerant than a tree, devoid of all sense of false prestige. I should be ready to offer all respect to others. In such state of mind, one can chant the holy name of the Lord constantly. O Almighty Lord, I have no desire to accumulate wealth, nor do I desire beautiful women, nor do I want any number of followers. I only want your cause of divorce from service, birth after birth. O son of Maharaj Nanda Krishna, I am your eternal servitor. Yes, some or other I've fallen in this ocean of birth and death. Please pick me up from this ocean of death and place me as one of the atoms at your lotus feet. O my Lord, when will my eyes be decorated with tears of love flowing constantly when I chant your holy name? When will my voice choke up, and will the hairs of my body stand on the end of the recitation of your name? O Govinda, feeling your separation, I'm considering a moment to be like 12 years or more. Tears are flowing from my eyes like torrents of rain, and I feel all vacant in the world in your absence. I know no one but Krishna as my Lord, and he should remain so. Even if he sunders me roughly by his embrace, or makes me broken-hearted by being present before me, he is completely free to do anything and everything, for his Lord is my worship before Lord unconditionally. Shri Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Sikhastakam Ki Jai. There are 10 offenses in matter of chanting the holy name of the Lord that should be avoided. They are as follows. 1. Blaspheme devotees who dedicate their life for propagating the holy name of the Lord. 2. To consider names demigods, the Lord Shiva and Lord Brahma, to be equal to or independent of the name Lord Vishnu. 3. To disobey the orders of the spiritual master. 4. To blaspheme the Vedic literature or literatures and pursuance of Vedic perversion. 5. To consider the glory of chanting Hare Krishna to be imagination. 6. To give some interpretation on the holy name of the Lord. 7. To commit sinful activities on strength of chanting the holy name of the Lord. 8. To consider chanting Hare Krishna as one of the auspicious ritualistic activities which are often in Vedas as fruitive activity, karma kanda. 9. to instruct the faithless person about the glories of holy name. And 10. Do not have complete faith in chanting the holy names, and to maintain material attachments, even for understanding so many instructions on this matter. It also an offense to be irretentive while chanting. Every devotee who claims to be Vaishnava must carefully guard against these 10 offenses in order to quickly achieve the desired success, Krishna Prem. Now let us offer our most humble obeisance unto all the Vaishnavas who worship the Lord.
They are just like desire trees that can fulfill the desires of everyone, and they are full of compassion for the fallen conditioned souls. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutali Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swamini Tinamani Namaste Saraswati Devi Guruvani Pacharani Nirvisesa Sunivani Paskati Shri Guru Pranama Prayers Ki Jai Om Aganyati Mirandasya Yananjana Salakaya Chaksurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manubhishtam Sapitam Yena Bhutali Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Bandeham Shri Guru Shri Jataha Pajakamalan Shri Gurun Vaishnavam Shah Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahaguna Ragunatan Vitam Tam Sajivam Saidvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahaguna Lalita Shri Vishaka Nivitam Sa Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namini Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisesa Sunyavadi Paskatya Desatarine Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Tinamini Shri Varsavanavi Devi Dayitaya Kripabdaye Krishna Sambandha Vijnana Dayane Prabhave Namaha Madhur Ujvala Premadya Shri Rupanuga Bhaktita Shri Gora Karuna Shakti Vigrahaya Namostate Namaste Gauravani Shri Murtaye Dinatarine Rupanuga Virudapa Apasiddhanta Dvantaharine Namo Gora Kishoraya Shakshad Vairagya Murtaye Vipralambara Sambodhe Padambujayate Namaha Namo Bhakti Vinodaya Sachitanandanamine Guru Shakti Swarupaya Rupanuga Varayate Gauravir Baba Bhumestvam Nirdesta Sajjana Priya Vaishnava Sarvabhuma Shri Jagannatayate Namaha Nvanshakalpa Turabhyascha Kripa Sindhubhye Bacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Premapadayate Krishna Krishna Chaitanya Namne Guritrase Namaha Panchatattvatmakam Krishnam Bhaktarupa Swarupakam Bhaktavataram Bhaktakam Namami Bhaktasaktikam Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Jayatam Surator Bangur Mama Mandamateya Gati Matsarva Swapadambujo Radha Madanan Mohano Divyad Vindaranya Kalpradumadaha Shimad Ratnagara Simhasanastito Shimad Radha Shila Govinda Devo Prastali Bihi Sevyamanam Smarami Shiman Rasa Rasaram Bivam Sivata Tatastita Karsan Venuswaner Gopir Gopinatakstriyesturna Tapta Kanchana Gorangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishabhanustute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktivindam Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Shri Guru Pranama Prayers Ki Jai Shri Brahma Samhita Ki Jai Ishwara Parama Krishna Sachitananda Vigraha Anadiradir Govinda Sarvakarana Karanam Chintamani Prakadasat Masukalpa Vriksha Laksha Vritesa Surabhira Vipaliyantam Lakshmi Sahasra Satasambhrama Sevyamanam Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Venum Gvanantam Aravinda Dalayataksham Bardhavatam Samasitam Buddha Sundarangam Kandarpa Koti Kamaniya Vishesha Sobam Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Alola Chandra Kalasadvanamalya Vamsi Ratnam Gadam Pranayakeli Kalavilasam Shamam Tribanga Lalita Niyata Prakasam Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Angani Yasya Sakalendriya Vrittimanti Pasyanti Panti Karyanti Chiram Jaganti Ananda Chinmaya Sadujvala Vigrahasya Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Avaitam Achyutam Anadim Anantarupam Adyam Purana Purusham Navayovanam Cha Vede Sudurlabam Adurlabam Atma Bhakto Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Pantasta Koti Satavatsara Sampragamyo Vayo Ratapi Manaso Munipungamanam Sopyasti Yat Prapadasimya Vichantya Tatve Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Ekop Yasora Chayatum Jagadanda Kotim Yas Chakti Rasti Jagadanda Chayayadanta Andanta Rasta Paramanu Chayanta Rastam Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Yad Bhava Bhavita Diyo Manijasta Teva Sampraptya Rupa Mahima Sanayana Bhusa Suptaryameva Nigama Pratitaistuvanti Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Ananda Chinmaya Rasat Pratibhavitabis Tabirya Eva Nijarupa Tayakalabi Goloka Eva Nivasata Kilatma Bhutto Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Premanjana Churita Bhakti Vilochanena Santaksadeva Hideyesu Vilokyanti Jamcham Sundaryam Achintya Guna Swarupam Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Ramadi Murti Sukalani Amenatistan Nanavataram Akarod Bhuvane Sukintu Krishna Swayam Samabhavat Paramam Pumam Yo Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Yasya Prabha Prabhavato Jagadanda Koti Kotisvasesu Vasudadi Vibhuti Binam Tad Brahma Niskalam Anantam Asesa Bhutam Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Mayahi Yasya Jagadanda Satani Sute Chaigunya Tad Vishaya Veda Vitayamanam Sadva Vulambi Parasatvam Visuddha Satvam Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Ananda Chinmaya Rasat Mataya Manasu Ya Praninam Trifalam Smaratam Upetya Lilaya Tena Bhuvanani Jaya Jasram Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Goloka Namni Nijatamni Tale Chatasya Devi Mahesu Haritama Sutesu Tesu Te Prabhava Nichaya Vihitascha Yena Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Shasti Stati Pralaya Sada Vasakti Reka Chayeva Yasya Bhuvanani Vibharti Durga Ichanu Rupam Apiyasya Chachesta Tesa Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Siram Yatada Divikara Visesa Yoga Sanjayate Nahitata Pritakasti Hetu Yasambutam Apitata Samapaiti Karyat Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Departure Evahita Santanam Abhyupetya Dipayate Vivita Hetu Samana Dharma Yastadrik Evahicha Vishnu Taya Vibhati Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Yakarna Narna Vajale Bhajatisma Yoga Nidram Ananta Jagananda Saroma Kupa Adhara Shaktim Avalambya Param Swamurtim Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Yasyaika Nisvasita Kala Matavalambya Jivanti Loma Vilaja Jagadanda Nata Vishnur Mahansa Yasya Kala Viseso Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Basmanya Tasma Sakalesuna Jesu Teja Sriyam Kiyat Prakatayat Apitadvadatra Brahmaya Esa Jagadanda Vidana Karta Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Yat Pada Balava Yugam Vinidaya Kumbha Dwande Pranama Samayesa Ganadi Raja Vignan Vihantam Alabasya Jagatrayasya Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham tamaham bhajami agnir mahi gaganamambu marutisascha kalastatatma manasiti jagatrayas Yaspad bhavanti vibhavanti visanti yam cha govindamadi purusham tamaham bhajami yaschaksuresa savita sakala grahanam raja samasta suramurtira sesa teja yasya gaya brahmati sambrita kala chakra govindam adi purusham tamaham bhajami dharmota papa nichaya sutayas purnamansi brahma dikita patagava dayascha jiva yadata matra vibhava pakata prabhava Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Yastrindra Gopa Matavendra Mahosva Karma Bandhan Rupa Falabhajana Matanoti Karmani Nirdahati Kintu Chabakti Bhajam Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Yam Krodha Kama Sahaja Pranayadi Vitti Vatsalya Moha Guru Gaura Vasevya Bhavai Sanchintya Tasya Sadrisim Tanamaparete Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Sri Akanta Kanta Parama Purusha Kalpataravo Druma Bhumi Strinamani Kanamai Toyamamritam Kata Ganam Natyam Gamanam Apivam Sipriya Saki Chidanandam Jati Param Apitad Aswadyam Apicha Sayatra Siradi Bihi Sravati Surabi Bhyas Chasumahan Nime Sardakyo Vavrajati Nahiyatrapi Samaya Bhaje Smita Dvipam Tamaham Iha Golakam Itiyam Vidantaste Santaksiti Viralachara Katipaye Ishwara Parama Krishna Sachitananda Vigraha Anadi Radhe Govinda Paranam Sri Brahma Samhita Ki Jai Shrimad Bhagavatam Grantharaj Ki Jai Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Shrimad Bhagavatam Canto 2 Chapter 10 Verse number 24 Hastoruru Hatustasya Nana Karma Chikirsaya Tayostu Balavan Indra Adanam Ubayasrayam Hasto, the hands, Ruruhatu, manifested, Tasya, his, Nana, various, karma, work, Chikirsaya, being so desirous, Tayo, of them, two, however, Balavan, to give strength, Indra, the demigod in heaven, Adanam, activities of the hands, Ubaya Ashrayam, dependent on both the demigod and the hands. Translation by Srila Prabhupada. Thereafter, when the Supreme Person desired to perform varieties of work, the two hands and their controlling strength and Indra, the demigod in heaven, became manifested as also the acts dependent on both the hands and the demigod. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. In every item, we can note with profit that the sense organs of the living entity are never independent at any stage. The Lord is known as the Lord of the senses, Hrishikesha. Thus, the sense organs of the living entities are manifested by the will of the Lord, and each organ is controlled by a certain type of demigod. No one, therefore, can claim any proprietorship of the senses. The living entity is controlled by the senses. The senses are controlled by the demigods, and the demigods are the servants of the Supreme Lord. That is the arrangement in the system of creation. The whole thing is controlled ultimately by the Supreme Lord, and there is no independence either of the material nature or of the living entity. The illusioned living entity who claims to be the Lord of his senses is under the clutches of the external energy of the Lord. As long as a living entity continues to be puffed up by his tiny existence, he is to be understood to be under the stringent control of the external energy of the Lord, and there is no question of liberation from the clutches of illusion, Maya. However much one may declare himself a liberated soul. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Thereafter, when the Supreme Person desired to perform varieties of work, the two hands and their controlling strength, and Indra, the demigod in heaven, became manifested as also the acts dependent on both the hands and the demigod. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So, the main point in this purport is no one, therefore, can claim any proprietorship of the senses. Now, this is a revolutionary concept because everyone's convinced that they're controlling their mind and their senses. But actually, they're not. They're being controlled by several levels of authorities. And the main ones are the demigods and Krishna. But there are other subordinate levels of control. So, this is a fact. Now, the fiction is what everybody believes, that they are in control. But no one can say they are in control because we are being controlled by birth, old age, disease, and death. Not anyone can remember choosing to be born. Anybody here remember choosing to be born? Not anyone in their right mind chooses to get old and chooses to get sick, and unless they're crazy, chooses to die. So we see that we're not in control of anything. All the most important things in our life we're not in control of: birth, old age, disease, and death. And we're not in control of our own senses. Now, some people say, well, no, I mean, the yogis, they control themselves. Well, they control to a certain degree, that's true, but not completely. Why? Because as long as you have even one desire, you're not really in control. So what is the desire of a yogi who's meditating many hours of the day, eating very little, sleeping very little? It looks as if they're completely in control of themselves. But no, the mystic yogi also has a desire. What is the desire, material desire of the mystic yogi? The desire is they want to develop the yoga cities. And usually when they develop 1 or 2 or 3 yoga cities, they get stuck. They're satisfied manifesting those yoga cities because people become very dazzled by their mastery of 1 or 2 or 3 yoga cities. Like, for example, Anima city. That means you can become smaller than the smallest. And Lagima city means you can become bigger than the biggest. Of course, no one's bigger than Krishna, but compared to ordinary human beings, and maybe even demigods. And Anima, Lagima, Garima means you become heavier than anything. And then there's so many others. There's Prapti, there's Isitva, there's Vasitva, there's Pragamya, and so forth. And finally, there's Samadhi. So these are all mystic cities or perfections. Finally, there's not Samadhi. There's finally there is, you can create a universe. Sorry. But it's an alternate universe. It's never completely perfect like the one that's already created by Krishna and with the help of Brahma. But it looks like that. Like Vishwamrita Muni, he developed that city of being able to create a universe. There was one low-class Sudra, and he tried to artificially go to the heavenly planets, and he was thrown back by Indra. And then Vishwamrita Muni got angry that Indra did that, So he created an alternate universe and elevated that nonsense Sudra to his own so-called heavenly planets. So you see, yogis, mystic yogis, can become very, very materially powerful, but they fall down because they still have a material desire. One material desire is enough to completely ruin someone's life. Now, just imagine, normal people have hundreds, thousands of desires. That's why, material desires, that is. Now, the Gyanis and these so-called mystic yogis, they try to give up material desires. But the one desire that the Gyanis are attached to is the development of knowledge. And the one desire that the yogis are attached to is developing these incredible material cities. There was one German man who came to India and became initiated by Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. And some of his godbrothers asked him, how come you came to India and took initiation from Guru Maharaj? He said, well, I'm German, and I realized that the tremendous development in the early 1900s, and then by the time you get to 1930s and 40s, we mastered many of the cities through mechanical science. We can fly through the air, we can go underneath the ocean, we can do so many things, heal sicknesses and prolong life somewhat. And so he said that, so we have created many of these yoga cities. So I realized that was not really the goal of life. That's why I came to India, to find out what is the real goal of life. And of course, he met Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. Now what's interesting is Einstein also went to India, right? But he didn't meet Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur like his other German. Einstein also was born in Germany. He met Rabindranath Tagore. That was just the right person for him to meet, because he was a Mayavadi, and so was Einstein. You see, as long as one does not have the association of a genuine devotee, they remain completely incomplete in their life. Completely incomplete. Right? That's called an oxymoron. Completely incomplete. Right? So, yeah, I mean, that was his destiny, not to meet Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. If he did, he would have become probably very impressed by him, because Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur was the smartest man in the world at that time. Einstein had the false label of being the smartest guy in the world, but he wasn't. That's why he met Rabindranath Tagore. Right? So we can see how everything depends on our desire. And if we have only spiritual desires to please Krishna, then it's unlimited how much Krishna can satisfy those spiritual desires. But if we have material desires, then we only get what we deserve by our karma from previous life. So we limit ourselves by having material desires, and we expand ourselves infinitely with spiritual desires. And if you have spiritual desires, even if you don't achieve your desire, you get the benefit of it. That's one advantage of Kali Yuga. You simply have to think of doing something good spiritually, and you get the good result. You get the good karma for it. Okay, so therefore, the living entity is controlled by the senses. The senses are controlled by the demigods, and the demigods are the servants of the Supreme Lord. This is the arrangement in the system of creation. The whole thing is controlled ultimately by the Supreme Lord, and there is no independence either of the material nature or of the living entity. Now, don't misinterpret this statement when it says there's no independence. In the case of the living entity, living entity, you and me, have, or human beings, let's say, have more independence than animals. Animals have no independence at all. Human being has limited free will. So there is a limited free will. But what is that limited to? It's limited to either accepting Krishna's instructions or rejecting them. Krishna doesn't force a human being to become a devotee. But he'll do everything possible to help the human being become a devotee. But he does not force him. It's not that he cannot force him. He gives that choice. Now, why does he give that choice to the human being as opposed to the animals? Because a human being has a chance to develop love of God. But love is something voluntary. It's not forced. Just like if someone says, gets you in a stranglehold like this, and says, do you love me? And you say, yeah, let go of me, please. Yeah, I love you. Well, is that love? No, that's not love. Love has to be something that is voluntary. Therefore, Krishna gives, when you go through the whole cycle of birth and death in this 8,400,000 species, you eventually may come to the civilized human being. There are 400,000 different human species, but very few of them are civilized. So it takes a long time to go through the whole birth and death, let's say, system to come to a civilized human form. And in that civilized human form, one has this free will that's limited to either accepting Krishna or rejecting Krishna. And that is not forced. So when we reject Krishna, then we are completely controlled by material nature. If we accept Krishna, we come under the protection of Krishna personally. Krishna will personally protect his devotee. So that means that if we remain on the path of Krishna consciousness, the progressive path, and change all our desires into spiritual desires to please Krishna, we are liberated from that point on, even though we're still in the material body. And at the moment of death, we can easily remember Krishna and go back to Godhead. So that is the summary of basically what's being said in this purport. And Prabhupada says, the illusioned living entity who claims to be the Lord of his senses is under the clutches of the external energy of the Lord, meaning Maya or Durga Mata. As long as the living entity continues to be puffed up, meaning arrogantly proud, by his tiny existence, he is to be understood to be under the stringent control of the external energy. And notice the word stringent. That means there's no way of getting out of it. No way of getting out of it unless one surrenders to Guru and Krishna. Otherwise, they're controlled with these stringent laws of material nature, of the external energy of the Lord, and there is no question of liberation from the clutches of illusion, Maya, however much one may declare himself a liberated soul. Well, that brings us to the subject I wanted to discuss today, and that is the laws of material nature. Because this is a subject that's not understood, even in other religions. But there's a very, very full explanation of it in Krishna consciousness. And that's why Krishna consciousness is unique in the universe, because it gives a full, what you would call, spectrum of knowledge, or a full unfolding of all the knowledge that is necessary to go back to Godhead. So there are two things you have to know to go back to Godhead. One, what we should not do, and two, what we should do. Now, that is not so clear in many other religions. Now, I'm not criticizing religions now, but I'm just stating facts. Like, for example, when the Pope, who's the head of the entire Christendom, entire Christianity, in a sense, he's a mediator. That means there's some law of material nature that he doesn't understand. You see. And when a Muslim imam convinces a young boy or young girl to strap bombs on their body and go blow up a public place with a lot of people walking around unwittingly, they don't know that's their last day in this earth, in this body, that is a serious violation of spiritual life, and that's not the what is spiritual life? Let's take a look at what Prabhupada says. This is in the 6th chapter. He says, one second. He says that yuktahara viharasya, yukta chetasya karmasu, yukta swapna abodasya yogo bhavati dukkha. And what does this say? It says, he who is regulated in habits of eating, sleeping, recreation, and work can mitigate all material pains by practicing the yoga system. Okay. Then before that, it says, Nasti anastas to yogosti. There is no possibility of one's becoming a yogi, or Arjuna, if one eats too much or eats too little, sleeps too much or does not sleep enough. So, what's being said here is that one must be, to be a civilized human being, one must be regulated in their habits of eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. And a person who is not regulated in those habits is not considered a civilized person. In fact, they'll become a demon in the sense that they will unwittingly, due to their ignorance or due to their false pride, commit sinful activities. Let's see what else it says. This is in the 6th chapter. And it says, okay. It says here, one second. Yeah. Vidyavinaya Sampani, Brahmani Gavi Hastani, Sunichaiva Swapakecha, Pandita Samadarshina. The humble sage, by virtue of true knowledge, sees with equal vision a learned and gentle Brahmana, a cow, an elephant, a dog, and a dog eater. So, what does that mean? That means that he has equal vision. He does not discriminate on the basis of the body. He rather understands things on the basis of the eternal soul, which is present in the body of all living entities. Therefore, he sees all living entities equally. What does that mean? He sees that every living entity is like a walking temple because Krishna is present in the heart. So therefore, he respects all living entities because he sees their connection to Krishna. That is a civilized person. He doesn't see that, oh, well, we shouldn't kill human beings, but we can kill animals all you want because we're supposed to eat those. Well, no, that's not true, right? So that such a person does not have this equal vision. Then again, it says, one second. A person who neither rejoices upon achieving something pleasant nor laments upon obtaining something unpleasant, who is self-intelligent, who is unbewildered, and who knows the science of God, is already situated in transcendence. The symptoms of the self-realized, and purport Prabhupada says, the symptoms of a self-realized person are given herein. The first symptom is that he is not illusioned by false identification of the body with his true self. In other words, they see the difference between the body and the soul. That's the number one evidence that someone is spiritually inclined. He knows perfectly well that he is not this body, but is the fragmental portion of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He is therefore not joyful in achieving something, nor does he lament in losing anything which is related to his body. This steadiness of mind is called sthira buddhi, or self-intelligence. He is therefore, self-intelligence means he knows who he is. He's the eternal servant of Krishna. He is not this race or this ethnicity or this nation or this or that. He's the eternal servant of the Lord. So he has self-realization. He is therefore never bewildered by mistaking the gross body for the soul, nor does he accept the body as permanent and disregard the existence of the soul, which is eternal. This knowledge elevates him to the station of knowing the complete science of the absolute truth, namely, Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. He thus knows his constitutional position perfectly well, as the eternal servant of the Lord, without falsely trying to become one with the Supreme in all respects. That's the false Mayavadis who want to merge into the existence of God and think they have become God by doing that. This is called Brahman realization or self-realization. Such steady consciousness is called Krishna consciousness. Okay, so that's a very, very important realization. And then also, in the 5th chapter, let's see, 5th chapter, it says, an intelligent person does not take part in the sources of misery which are due to contact with the material senses. O son of Kunti, such pleasures have a beginning and an end, and so the wise man does not delight in them. And the purport, Prabhupada says, material sense pleasures are due to the contact of the material senses, which are all temporary because the body itself is temporary. A liberated soul is not interested in anything which is temporary. That's the key. A liberated soul is not interested in anything that is temporary. So that is actually a verse in the 2nd chapter, which says that a liberated soul is only interested in things that are eternal. And temporary things that can be used in the service of God are used by a self-realized living being. In other words, if you take a temporary thing, let's say like an apple, and let's say you peel it and you cut it into pieces and you offer it to Krishna, you're using something material in the purpose of to please the Lord. That process and the whole offering and everything makes that material thing spiritual. In other words, you are participating in transforming something material into something spiritual. And by accepting the give back of Krishna, the prasadam, you become spiritualized also. Your body and your mind, your senses, everything becomes spiritualized by accepting the Mahaprasadam. So, therefore, material sense pleasures are due to the contact of material senses, which are all temporary because the body itself is temporary. A liberated soul is not interested in anything which is temporary, knowing well the joys of transcendental pleasures. How can a liberated soul agree to enjoy false pleasure? In the Padma Purana, it is said, the mystics derive unlimited transcendental pleasures from the Absolute Truth, and therefore, the Supreme Absolute Truth, the Personality of Godhead, is also known as Rama. Rama means the reservoir of all pleasures. It's the name of Krishna. It's also the name of Lord Rama. In the Srimad Bhagavatam 5.5.1, it is said by Rishabhadev to his sons, he had 100 sons, my dear sons, there is no reason to labor very hard for sense pleasure while in this human form of life. Such pleasures are available to the stool eaters, meaning pigs. Rather, you should undergo penances in this life by which your existence will be purified, and as a result, you will be able to enjoy unlimited transcendental bliss. Well, who's the example of this? Lord Brahma himself, the first created being. He hears the syllables tapa, and because he was living previously, and then his time in that previous body came to an end, and then there's a period of waiting, and then he takes birth again, but obviously he was extremely pious in the previous life. He gets the body of Brahma, and when he hears these two syllables, tapa, he understands it because it's from his previous life. So he engages in severe austerity for a very, very long time, and eventually Krishna reveals himself to Brahma, gives him the knowledge by which he can be the secondary subordinate creator of the material nature. Krishna is the first. And he gets a vision of Krishna, he gets a vision of the spiritual world, and he gets the duty to populate this universe. So this is an example of what's being said here by Rishabhadev. He's saying there's no reason to labor very hard for sense pleasure while in this human form of life. Such pleasures are available to the stool eaters, pigs. Why does he say that? Because everybody has a mixed bag of positive and negative karma from a previous life. So whether you want it or not, we are going to have a certain amount of pleasure, and we're also going to have a certain amount of misery in this present life, and it's all dependent on our previous karma. So therefore, you don't have to work hard for pleasure, because whether you work or you don't work, you're going to get it by your karma, and you don't have to. But on the other hand, we should work hard to please the Lord in this lifetime and become free of karma, so we don't have to take birth again. Right? Rather, you should undergo penances in this life by which your existence will be purified, and as a result, you will be able to enjoy unlimited transcendental bliss. Well, everything spiritual is eternal. So if we give up material life and engage in spiritual life, material life is having a false ego and working only for my own personal satisfaction or the satisfaction of my family or my race or my religion or this thing or that thing, and work uniquely to please Krishna. If you please Krishna, every other goal will be attained in life. Every other positive goal will be attained. In other words, you'll be able to do all your duties, family duties, this duty, that duty, properly, and at the same time make progressive spiritual advancement when the main purpose is pleasing Krishna. So here it says, therefore those who are true yogis or learned transcendentalists are not attracted by sense pleasures, which are the causes of continuous material existence. The more one is addicted to material pleasures, the more he is entrapped by material miseries. So this is a law of nature. The more one is addicted to sense pleasures or material pleasures, the more one is entrapped or afflicted by material miseries. Now, try and explain this to someone. Like, let's say he's an 18-year-old kid, and try and explain it to him. He said, "What? I don't believe that." Try and explain this to an older person, let's say a 60-year-old person, and say, "Well, that makes sense. I've experienced it in my own life. Every time I got into having, sense pleasures, this seems to be, if I think about it, it was always followed by some misery, right? The day I ate, 6 hamburgers, I was sick for 2 weeks, right? And the day I went to this festival during the COVID, I came home and a couple days later I had COVID, right? And the day I did this, and then this other thing happened. And so, there is a correlation between sense pleasures and misery, if you think about it carefully. Okay, so to make a more, let's say, quicker summary of laws of nature, the first law of nature that everyone experiences, that cannot escape from it, is birth, old age, disease, and death. It's a law of nature. Everyone is subject to it. Doesn't matter what religion, doesn't matter what yoga you do, everyone's subject to this. Second law of nature is we have to eat, we have to sleep, we have to mate, and we have to defend. You can't escape these things. You can try. The only way you can escape these things, or at least diminish them until they're insignificant, is through Krishna consciousness. Otherwise, you can take all kinds of supplements. You're still going to get old, sick, and die. You can try and just meditate 24 hours a day, which no one can do, but you could try to do it. But you're still going to be involved in eating, sleeping, and mating in a sense, and defending. Okay, so number 3, people's actions influenced by the 3 modes of material nature. People's actions are influenced by the 3 modes of material nature as long as one remains conditioned by material nature. He or she has to act according to the particular mode of nature that they are influenced by. So the modes of material nature are fluctuating all the time, right? So I've explained this before. When you're sleeping, it's the mode of ignorance. When you wake up, you try to remember who you are, what your duties are in life, and so it becomes a mode of passion because you got to get going, right? And then later on in the day, maybe, if you come to the class, if you see the Aarti, you might come back to the mode of goodness for a couple hours. But as soon as you go to work, it's back into the mode of passion, and then it's a downward spiral after that to the mode of ignorance. So the modes are fluctuating, but the mode that is most prominent, which is usually passion or ignorance, is the one that influences you the most, right? So when we're under the influence of the modes of material nature, we're being forced to do things, even in the mode of goodness, mundane goodness. It's only in transcendental goodness that we're free of the influence of the modes of nature. So most people, like 99% of people in this world, are influenced by the modes of material nature, and therefore they're not independent. They're being forced to do things. You eat, you're forced to go to the bathroom, right? You sleep, you're forced to wake up. You work hard, you're forced to sleep. You get tired, right? So all these are laws of material nature, and we're being controlled by the modes. Okay? Then number 4 is the more one is addicted to material pleasures, the more he or she is entrapped by material miseries. We went over that one, okay. The fifth one is material desires, when unsatiated, when unsatisfied, generate anger, and thus the mind, eyes, and chest become agitated. I don't think anyone would disagree with that. When you really get angry about something, when you're frustrated, you sort of breathe heavily, and your eyes start opening up, and you start using harsh words, and there are symptoms. Okay, and then number 6, sufferings of humanity are due to forgetfulness of Krishna as the supreme enjoyer, proprietor, and supreme friend. Well, everyone is working to be an enjoyer in this world, and then when they get some money, they start buying gadgets and different things for their comfort, right? Like one time I was talking about how silly certain products are that are being advertised on television. And I was talking about this one chair. I saw this one advertisement, it's a long time ago. This chair, and this lady is sitting down in a very somewhat forlorn, bored image of her face, right? And then she gets this remote control thing and presses on it, and zzz, the chair goes up, like this part of the chair goes up, and her feet come up. And as her feet come up, and the chair reclines like that, she gets a big smile on her face. Right? And then she goes, zzz, and then the chair goes down again, and she comes back, and then a little bit not so happy. And then she goes again, zzz, and the chair comes up again, and reclines, and she has a big smile on her face. And I said, this is the dumbest product I've ever seen in my life, So everyone was laughing just like this. But then one lady just kept laughing, hysterically almost. And I was just looking at her. I said, Mrs. So-and-so, I said, what's so funny? And she said, my husband just bought that chair. So, so that's what happens when you have, when you get, like $180,000 a year salary, being in IT, you start buying things. We're living, as I said before, in a consumer culture. We're living in a gigantic consumerism culture, and there's advertisements for all kinds of things that you don't really need, but they convince you that you must have this thing, otherwise you won't be happy, right? So there's different types of beds, and there's different types of cars, and there's different types of foods, and there's different types of gadgets to help you lose weight or gain weight, or this thing or that thing, And there's millions of products, millions of factories all over the world producing products that mostly are not really needed. Because, how do we know that? Because people live without them for hundreds of millions of years, right? And still humanity, how did you get over 1 billion people in India? That's because there's hundreds of millions of years of reproduction going on in Bharat, right? So we get this false sense that we must have all these gadgets to be happy, but you don't need all those gadgets. Just like this one devotee I know, one day he called me up. He said, Prabhu, have you heard about this product? I said, what's that product? Well, it's this Japanese man. He invented this amazing product, this machine that makes alkaline water, and it heals all diseases. I said, don't tell me you bought that machine. He said, yeah, what do you mean? Of course I bought it. I said, that's the biggest mistake you've made. What do you mean I made a mistake? No, I completely believe in this alkaline water. I said, alkaline water? I said, I can tell you how to make it for 5 cents. He said, what? That's crazy. I had to pay $5,000 for that machine. I said, I know. You wasted your money. He said, no, I haven't wasted. You don't know what you're talking about. And he hung up on me. Right? So let's fast forward 1 year. I asked him, how's the alkaline water? So I don't use that machine anymore. He said, I bought it for my wife. She's always sick, but she seemed to get a little better in the beginning, but over a long run, it didn't do anything. I said, I told you wasted your money, and I could tell you how to make alkaline water with 5 cents. So how's that? I said, you just put some salt in the water, that's all. It becomes alkaline. So you see how crazy people are, I mean, devotees, right? This guy's a devotee, right? How crazy people are, and they become influenced by advertisements, and they give you so many, there was a study in Harvard University of this Dr. Ajimoto Wato, and he's a PhD also in Japan, and he came up with this machine that makes alkaline water, and they tested it in Harvard, and it works. And it heals, diabetes, and it heals high blood pressure, and it heals cancer, and it heals this thing and that thing, This is all nonsense, right? If it's so good, why don't you use it first and let me see what happens, So people come up with crazy ideas and crazy inventions, and it's all about making money, and they get these PR people to help them so that they make this rosy, description of the product. So we live in a consumer society, and when you make extra money that you don't really need, you start spending it on things that you don't need, and it just clutters up the house and just confuses people, because they have to have maintenance. They have this insurance for this, and that insurance for something else, and pretty soon your whole life is cluttered up with responsibilities to maintain all these things that you bought. Okay, so then the sufferings of humanity are due to forgetfulness of Krishna as the supreme enjoyer, proprietor, and supreme friend. So these are the 3 most important points to understand in order to have a peaceful life. Bhoktaram yagitapasam sarvaloka maheshwara suridam sarvabhutanam yajyadva santim richyati. So, number 1, Bhoktaram yagitapasam. Krishna is the ultimate enjoyer of all sacrifices, or ultimate beneficiary of all sacrifices. So any sacrifice you make should be to please Krishna. And if you make sacrifices, just like the Irish Republican Army, when they were fighting against the British in Ireland, the British caught some of these terrorists. They were acting like terrorists, and put them in jail, in a British jail. And they went on a hunger strike, right? And this was good for the British because they didn't have to feed them. That costs money, right? And the British didn't care about the publicity it was making. The day number 10 of the hunger strike, day number 30 of the hunger strike, day number 60. Oh no, there's no 60. The guy already died on the 59th day. So they just let him starve to death. They didn't care about the publicity or anything, So that is a false penance, or a false tapasya, because you're not accepting voluntary, let's say, tapasya, or denial of things for spiritual progress. It's for a material goal, to get out of jail, or to make the British look bad. So any type of penance or tapasya like that is actually demoniac, because it hurts your body and it hurts your ability to be Krishna conscious. Because you're not meditating on Krishna all the time. You're meditating on, kill the Brits. So that is not considered a positive thing. So Krishna is the enjoyer. So we should only do things that gives joy to Krishna. Now, we're part and parcel of Krishna. So if he's happy, we'll definitely be happy because we're part and parcel of him. Right? But if we try and please ourselves and ignore Krishna, then we get caught by the laws of material nature and the laws of karma and the modes of material nature and the time factor and all these things that entangle us and just cause misery. Then Krishna is the ultimate proprietor, Maheshwara. Therefore, everything should be used in the service of Krishna, and we should only accept the minimum things necessary to maintain our body and soul together. That is in the Ishopanishad, Kurvanevha Karmani Jajiva Chektatam Samha, and it's many verses in the Bhagavad Gita. Living a minimalist life, understanding that Krishna is the proprietor of everything. And then number 3, Krishna is the supreme friend. It's not that, oh, Dr. So-and-so is the best friend because he taught me how to lose weight. That doesn't mean he's your best friend. The best friend is the one who teaches you how to get free of this body, this material body, and have your spiritual body. That's the best friend. And that's Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita. Okay, so then number 7. There are many laws of material nature, and they become more and more subtle as we go along. Number 7 is attachment to society, friendship, and in other words, false attachment to society, friendship, and family for sense gratification are always full of anxieties. Well, yeah. Family life, we should be part of the spiritual family of Krishna. And that way, we try and have a family to become Krishna conscious. And we try and follow the rules and regulations of Krishna consciousness at home. And we try to teach our children that the purpose of life is not to become an IT or AI person, but to become a Hare Krishna person, right? I mean, you might have to work honestly to maintain a family in the future. That's okay. Working honestly is not bad. But the goal of life should be to please Krishna, not to have a house full of hundreds and thousands of gadgets for sense gratification, right? It should be, the house should be minimalist, and life should be simple, and thinking should be high thinking all the time. How to please Krishna, how to please Guru, like that. So, therefore, this false attachment to society, friendship, and family, and so-called love, based on sense gratification, will just create anxieties in life. And there are plenty of anxieties. I remember after my wife and I had our first kid, I was in anxiety all the time. I was thinking, we have to protect this child, we have to try and make sure, he doesn't fall down the steps, because now he's starting to walk, and he doesn't slip, and he doesn't do this, and doesn't do that. One time our kid went out on the balcony, almost fell over, right? We were living in a small apartment, like on the 6th floor, and he almost fell over, right? And it scared the heck out of me. I was thinking, my God, if we didn't just grab him at that, I grabbed him right away, but otherwise he was going to go over, So, this anxiety all the time, So I don't want to go through all the different examples of anxiety in marriage, but there's plenty of them. And do you agree? Do you agree, ladies? Okay, and then number 8, in the material world, whatever is produced by the materialist with great pain and labor for so-called material happiness in the name of economic development, the Supreme Lord, as the time factor, destroys. And for this reason, the conditioned soul laments, and they waste their time in trying to improve economic conditions. In other words, everything we're going to produce in the name of economic development, what we call it the Trump syndrome, right? it's all going to be destroyed over time. Nothing is going to be permanent, right? And all the things that we had, like I had this thing, and I had that thing, and I had owned this company and that company, and I had this house here and that other house over there and another house over there. And it's all going to be destroyed, right, by the time factor. So, therefore, what is actually important then in life? Therefore, it says in the Bhagavad Gita, 2nd chapter, that we should be concerned mainly with what is sat, eternal, and not be concerned so much with things that are asat, or not eternal. So what is it? Okay. Anyway, I'll quote it in a second. Nasato vidyate bhavo na bhavo vidyate sata ubayor apidristo natas tvanayos tattvadarshibhihi. Those who are seers of the truth have concluded that of the non-existent, the material body, there is no endurance, and of the eternal, meaning the soul, there is no change or no death. This they have concluded by studying the nature of both. So therefore, in the purport, Prabhupada says, this is the beginning instruction by the Lord to the living entities who are bewildered by the influence of ignorance. Removal of ignorance involves the reestablishment of the eternal relationship between the worshipper and the worshipable, or meaning between the living entity and Krishna, and the consequent understanding of the difference between the part and parcel living entities and the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In other words, we can never become Krishna. We are always subordinate to Krishna. In the Vedanta Sutra, as well as in the Srimad Bhagavatam, the Supreme has been accepted as the origin of all emanations. Such emanations are experienced by superior and inferior natural sequences. The living entities belong to the superior nature, as it will be revealed in the 7th chapter. Although there is no difference between the energy and the energetic is accepted as the supreme, and the energy or nature is accepted as the subordinate. The living entities, therefore, are always subordinate to the Supreme Lord, as in the case of master and the servant, or the teacher and the taught. Such clear knowledge is impossible to understand under the spell of ignorance, and to drive away such ignorance, the Lord teaches the Bhagavad Gita for the enlightenment of all living entities for all time. So, therefore, we should be concerned about what's eternal, because that's what's going to last. And everything that's temporary, if we use them properly in the service of Krishna, then we're not entangled by them. If we use them for sense gratification, they just entangle us and make us incapable of making any spiritual advancement, because we're so concerned about maintaining all these temporary things. Right? Okay. In the material world, whatever is produced by the materialist with great pain and labor for so-called material happiness in the name of economic development, the Supreme Lord, as the time factor, destroys. And for this reason, the conditioned soul laments. They waste time in improving economic conditions. And number 8, what time is it now? 7:21. Oh, okay. So we'll just do one more. There's a lot more, but we'll just do one more. Number 8, those who engage in the... number 9, I'm sorry. Those who engage in the culture of ignorant activities by accepting the body as permanent and everything in relation to the body, like home, country, society, and other material things as permanent, is called the illusion of Maya. Out of this illusion have grown family life, national life, economic development, etc. They enter into the darkest, such people enter into the darkest region of ignorance. So there's 2 types of family life. There's Grihamedi and Grihastra. Grihastra is spiritual family life, and it's a good thing. Grihamedi is materialistic family life, and it's a very, very bad thing, right? So then that's when it says family life, it's referring to Griha Medi life, where one is only interested in sense gratification in the family. So, and then number 10, worse still are those engaged in the culture of so-called knowledge. Now it's talking about the people that cultivate mundane knowledge to improve sense gratification, and also the Mayavadi philosophy that people want to become God. So they think that they can become God by renouncing everything and wanting to merge into the spiritual light emanating from the body of Krishna called the Brahma Jyoti. So both ways they go, that's worse. That's worse than being simply a materialist. The materialist goes to the darkest region of existence, but worse still are the Mayavadis and the so-called Gyanis that want to merge into the existence of God and become God. Okay, so we'll stop right there. Are there any questions? I'm going to make a full list of these laws of nature because it's very important to understand them. Yes. Yes.
Maharaj, the question was, I understand that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead and we constantly worship and serve as much as we can.
Let him give you the microphone. Just 1 second. You understand. Start again. You understand
Hare
that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead.
Yes, but now people who worship Lord Shiva is a special tattva, and now
Is it special what?
a special tattva.
Tattva, okay.
Yeah. So when they worship, are they still under the influence of the three modes of material nature?
Well, let me ask you a question.
Yes.
Is Lord Shiva under the influence of a mode of nature?
Yes, mode of ignorance.
So, therefore, if he is under the influence, slightly under the
Yes.
influence of ignorance,
Yes,
what will his followers be?
they will be under still the.
There you go. This question was answered long time ago by Bhrigu Muni, who
Right.
was deputed by the demigods to figure out which of the trigunas, or Brahma, Vishnu, or Shiva, is actually God. This question was asked long time ago, millions of years ago.
Mhm.
Right? And Bhrigu Muni, who was the son of Brahma, the brother of Shiva,
Yes.
and the devotee of Vishnu, went to all three. And when he came back, he said, there's no doubt about it in my mind, Vishnu is the Supreme Personality of God. Because he did something that Brahma didn't like, and Brahma got really angry at him. And then he did something that Shiva didn't like at all. He was going to kill him. But Parvati saved him. And he did something horrible, really horrible to Lord Vishnu. And Lord Vishnu did not get disturbed at all. In fact, he apologized to him. And it shocked him. And he jumped off of the Lord's chest and bowed down to him. And he was 100% convinced that Vishnu is completely free
Yes.
of the influence of modes and material nature. Okay?
Yes. Thank you, Maharaj.
Jai. Any other questions? That was a good question. You know, most people say, "Oh my God, what am I going to say? How am I going to answer that?" But if you come to class on a regular basis, you'll learn the answer to all these hard questions. That's a hard question, actually, for many people. Right?
Maharaj, couple of questions online. Today you mentioned that, so in Kali Yuga, thinking good for others creates positive good karma. But in one of the other previous classes, you also said that in Kali Yuga, you have to do something physically to incur the karmic reaction. So,
But those are two different things. One is, you might think of something bad, right? So in previous ages, you would get the karma right away, just for thinking of something bad. In Kali Yuga, you have this dispensation, a special like perk, right, to help you because it's such a hard time to be Krishna conscious. So you don't get the karmic reaction for thinking of doing something bad. You only get it if you do something bad.
Okay, bad.
Yeah. That's different than the other thing, that if you simply think of something good in Kali Yuga, you don't have to do it. You just thinking about it, you get the positive karma.
Okay.
But remember, karma always keeps you bound up in the cycle of birth and death. Don't forget that. So good karma, bad karma, they're both bad.
Yeah.
They're reactions that keep you, that force you to take birth again in order to get either the good or bad reaction.
There is one more question online, which was asked yesterday. So in Bhagavad Gita 9.5, it says, again summarizing, and yet everything that is created does not rest in me. Versus in the next verse, 9.6, all created beings rest in me. So want to understand what is the difference, because it seems contradictory.
Okay, well, let's take a look at that. I always like to see what we're talking about. Yeah, these two verses, 4 and 9.5, are very important verses. So it says, Nacha matstani bhutani pasyame yogam aiswaram bhuta brin nacha bhutasto mamatma bhuta bhavanam. And yet, everything that is created does not rest in me. Wait a minute. Let's get one thing straight. Read that question again.
So the question says, 9.5, it says, everything that is created does not rest in me. And 9.6, it says, all created beings rest in me.
No, all created beings are in me. Rest in me, are in me, not exactly the same thing. Okay, that's why I wanted to go back to the original verse. So 9.4 says, by me, in my unmanifested form, this entire universe is pervaded. All beings are in me, but I am not in them. And then next verse says, and yet everything that is created does not rest in me. Behold my mystic opulence. So this is the difference between Virat Rupa and Swayam Bhagavan, or Krishna's original form. Krishna manifests a Virat Rupa in which everything is resting in his body. Right? Huh? Unmanifested? No, it's Virat. Well, normal people can't see it, but Arjuna was able to see it. Krishna gave him the eyes to see it. Right? So this is a temporary form that Krishna assumes and encompasses the entire material creation in one universe, right? So, in that sense, everything is resting in him. But in Krishna's two-armed form with the flute, the 3 points, he has 3 bending form, the Tribhanga, that is completely independent of the material world. And he never touches the material world, but he can expand himself as the Vishnu incarnations. He can expand himself also as the Virat Rupa. So therefore he can say, all beings are in me, but I am not in them. In other words, not that he says I am not in them, and yet everything that is created does not rest in me. That's why he can say that. Everything is in me, in my Virat Rupa form, but everything created does not rest in me because his form is Swayam Bhagavan in the spiritual world. It has no connection with it. Yeah.
understand that as the mighty wind blowing everywhere, rests always in the sky, all created beings rest in me. Again,
Yeah, all created being. A created being means the material body covering the soul. Only the body is created, not the soul, right? So they're talking about everybody in the material world. So you have to read the rest of the Bhagavad Gita to understand these verses. You know, you have to read the 11th chapter where the universal form of Krishna is explained. Otherwise, you will not be able to understand these verses. It seems as if this is contradictory. It seems as if he's making two completely contradictory statements. He's not. You have to understand the expansions of the Lord to understand these verses. Okay? Any other questions? What?
There's another Bhagavad Gita verse 9:30.
9:30. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, that's a very nice verse. Go ahead. Samaham sarvabhutesu, that one?
No, api chetsu duracharo.
Apichet sudurachara. Okay, yeah.
Yeah. Says if one commits the most abominable action,
Yes.
if he is engaged in the devotional service, he is to be considered saintly because he is properly situated in his determination.
Right.
My question was, this abominable action.
So, well, first of all, abominable action means you kill a brahmana, you kill a cow, you murder a child. Right? That it's talking about things like that on the level of most abominable actions. Go ahead.
So I was trying to understand whether this abominable action occurs being a devotee, or does the abominable action happens first and then reforms. Like for example, while raising up, I heard a story of Kannappa, or I don't remember the name exactly, but he's a like a animal hunter, and he used to eat meat, but he used to be considered as a great devotee of Shiva. So does this verse describe him, because he was already a devotee, but he is doing action that we think abominable? Or does this verse convey somebody who was not a devotee but later reformed to be a devotee?
No, this verse describes someone who is a devotee, but who committed an abominable act. Right. Now, I'll give you a real life example. There's this one devotee who murdered another devotee. Right, and he got caught, and he's in jail for life. Right. Now, in the jail, he got real serious about Krishna consciousness. Right? I mean, he was serious at one time, and then he was ordered by some other so-called leader to murder someone, and he did. And then he got caught, and he went to jail. Now, in the jail, he chants his rounds every day. He follows all the Ekadasis. He fasts on the Ekadasis, and he follows everything, right? So the fact that he's continuing to be a devotee means that you should not criticize him. You don't want to, this is an extreme case, right? He actually murders another devotee. That's an extreme case. But he's in jail. He's not going to get out of jail. But in the jail, he's continuing to follow Krishna consciousness, so he shouldn't be criticized. Now, people can do lesser abominable acts, right? And but if they continue in devotional service, they should not be criticized. So let's say someone has illicit sex, okay? And then everybody knows about it, right? But the devotee admits that he made a terrible mistake, and he promises not to do it again, and he becomes very serious about Krishna consciousness, then you should not criticize that person. Those are two cases. One actually did the most abominable thing, murdered someone. The other, someone had illicit sex, which is very bad. It's just as bad as almost as bad as killing someone. But yet, both of them continue in devotional service after that. Therefore, they should not be criticized. That's basically what that verse is saying. Do you understand?
Yes, Maharaj.
Now, let's say you made a mistake, right? All of us make mistakes, right? So the idea is that if you shame a person, no, wait a minute. We're talking about one accidental mistake or one premeditated mistake, right? We're not talking about every week they make a mistake. That's not going to be excused, right? Or in 1 year they made the same mistake 3-4 times. That's not going to be excused. But if it's an accidental mistake or circumstantial mistake, and even if it's very bad, still, I mean, the person's not going to get out of jail, right? He's already been convicted. But in jail, he's following all the rules and regulations and chanting sincerely. So that person should not be condemned publicly because they're continuing in devotional service. And then someone makes a lesser mistake, they don't have to go to jail, but they stay involved in Krishna consciousness. They accept to be subordinate to spiritual authorities. They don't cause any more trouble. So they should not be shamed so much that everyone like hates them, right? You understand what's being said? Because Krishna knows that people are going to make mistakes. So if they're willing to rectify themselves, stay under the authority of bona fide gurus and Shiksha and Diksha gurus, and then follow rules and regulations and don't do it again, they're forgiven. If it's a regular thing, they're not forgiven. But if it's just a one-time thing, or maybe 2 times, they can be forgiven. 3 times, you're out. You're struck out, But if it's an accidental thing or an incidental thing, it can be excused. Of course, murder is not going to be excused. They have to be punished by the state, but they can be respected for becoming serious in jail. And usually, what they do is they start preaching to the other prisoners, and then you have a whole group of devotees now in jail. So the person should be recognized for rehabilitating himself and helping others. They're not going to get out of jail, that's for sure. Okay?
Thank you, Maharaj.
We don't want to shame people for making a mistake. If they make it regularly, that's different. They have to be, they can't stay in the association of devotees.
So the ultimate goal is to remember Krishna.
Yes.
Even though you have a temporary deviation, you want to make sure that people are not condemned to the point where they don't get back onto the
Exactly. Exactly right. But you can't use that verse to continually do wrong things. It's not a license to do wrong things. It's the mercy of the Lord that people can be forgiven to a certain extent, But if it's a regular habit, then that's it. Person's out. Haribo. Okay, all goes to Prabhupada. Anybody want to chant? Any of the ladies want to chant? Okay. Samarth? You want to chant? Okay. Oh, you did the homework. Okay. Well, after Kirtan. And also, what's his name? Shrikant. What's his name? Yeah, he also did homework. Is he here? No. Shri Guru Charana Padma Kevala Bhakta Sarma Mando Mui Savadana
Jahara prasade bhai e bhava toriya jai
Janara prasade bhai e bhava toriya jai
Krishna prapti ho jaha hote
Krishna prapti hoya hoye
Guru mukha padma vakya jite te koriya kya
Guru Mukha Padma Vakya Chitete Goriya Kya
Arana kori ho mane asha
Arana Koriya Mane Asa
Shri Guru Charane Rati Aise Utama Gati
Aise Utama Gati
Jai Prasade Pure Sarvasha
Ye Prasade Pure Sarvasa
Jai Prasade Pure Sarvasha
Ye Prasade Pure Sarvasa
चक्षुदान दिलो जय जन्मे जन्मे प्रभु से
चक्षुदान दिल जे जन्मे जन्मे प्रभु से
चक्षुदान दिलो जय जन्मे जन्मे प्रभु से
चक्षुदान दिल जे जन्मे जन्मे प्रभु से
दिव्य ज्ञान हृदय प्रकाशित
दिव्य ज्ञानी ने प्रकाशित
दिव्य ज्ञान हृदय प्रकाशित
दिव्य ज्ञानी ने प्रकाशित
प्रेम भक्ति जहाँ होते अविद्या विनाश जयते
भक्ति चाहते अविद्या विनाश जय
प्रेम भक्ति जहाँ होते अविद्या विनाश जयते
भक्ति चाहते अविद्या विनाश जय
वेद गाय जहर चरित Shri Guru Karuna Sindhu Adama Janara Bandhu Lokanath Lokera Jivana Lokanath Lokera Jivana Ha Prabhu Guru Daya De Hamare Pada Jaya Ha Prabhu Guru Daya De Hamare Pada Jaya Ibijas Kushukti Bhuvana Prabhupada Patita Pavana Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Namo Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashyata Deshatarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nitai Gaura Hari Bo, Hari Bo, Hari Bo, Nitai Gaura Hari Bo.
Jayam Vishnupad Paramahansa Pararajagacharya Satarishi Shimad, His Divine Grace. A.C. Bhaktivedanta Goswami Maharaj, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Ananta Koti Vaishnavinda Ki Jai, Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur. Prem Shri Gaur Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasati Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai, Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gaur Gopinath Samakunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai, Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai, Shri Mayapura Dham Ki Jai, Shri Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai, Tulasi Devi Ki Jai, Bhakti Devi Ki Jai, Ganga Maya Ki Jai, Jamuna Maya Ki Jai, Samaveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glories to Samaveda. All glories to Samaveda. All glories to Samaveda. All glories to Shri Guru and Shri Guranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Vestaya Bhakti Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami. Namaste Saraswati Devi Guruvani Pujari. Nirvisesa Sunyavadi Praskati Chitari. The lotus feet of our spiritual master are the only way by which we can attain pure devotional service. I bow down to his lotus feet in great awe and reverence. By his grace, one can cross the ocean of material suffering and obtain the mercy of Krishna. My only wish is to have my consciousness purified by the words emanating from his lotus mouth. Attachment to his lotus feet is the perfection that fulfills all desires. He opens my darkened eyes and fills my heart with transcendental knowledge. He is my Lord, birth after birth. From him ecstatic prema emanates. By him ignorance is destroyed. The Vedic scriptures sing of his character. Our spiritual master is the ocean of mercy, the friend of the poor, and Lord and master of devotees. O Master, be merciful unto us. Give us the shade of your lotus feet. Your fame is spread throughout all the three worlds. We take shelter of your lotus feet. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Namaste. This morning we have a short meeting discussing a new project, the Coalition for Goodness, which is going to be the theme of the Ananda Mela this year. So if you want to be part of this project, stick around. We're going to start in a few minutes. Okay, so this project of Coalition for Goodness is all about helping a larger group of people with a lot of diversity, different races, different ethnicities, different religions, come together and understand what are the laws of nature, and especially what is the influence of the three modes of nature on themselves, and to see the value and benefit of learning to live in the mode of goodness. Because mode of goodness, as explained in Bhagavad Gita, what does it mean? Let's take a quick look. It's explained in the 17th and 18th chapter, Bhagavad Gita. And it says, starting 18th chapter, and it begins in the 12th verse, 18th chapter. It says, "For one who has not renounced the threefold fruits of action, desirable, undesirable, and mixed, accrue after death. But those who are in the renounced order of life have no such result to suffer or enjoy." And that is the 18th chapter, 12th verse. And in the purport, Prabhupada says, "A person in Krishna consciousness acting in knowledge of his relationship with Krishna is always liberated. Therefore, he does not have to enjoy or suffer the results of his acts after death." And then, if we fast forward to verse number 17, "One who is not motivated by false ego, whose intelligence is not entangled, though he kills men in this world, does not kill, nor is he bound by his actions." Then 18. Knowledge, the object of knowledge, and the knower are the three factors that motivate action. The senses, the work, and the doer are the three constituents of action. According to the three different modes of material nature, there are three kinds of knowledge: action and performer of action. Now hear of them from me, Krishna says. So then, text 20, "That knowledge by which one's undivided spiritual nature is seen in all living entities, though they are divided into innumerable forms, you should understand to be in the mode of goodness." And then it explains what knowledge in the mode of passion is, and what knowledge in the mode of ignorance is. And then next it says, "That action which is regulated," this is text 23, "and which is performed without attachment, without love or hatred, and without desire for fruit of results, is said to be in the mode of goodness." And then explains what action and passion and ignorance is. And then it says in text 26, "One who performs his duty without association with the modes of material nature, without false ego, with great determination and enthusiasm, and without wavering in success or failure, is said to be a worker in the mode of goodness." And then explains the worker in mode of passion and ignorance. And then text 29, text 30, "O Arjuna, that understanding by which one knows what ought to be done and what ought not to be done, what is to be feared and what is not to be feared, what is binding and what is not, and what is liberating, is in the mode of goodness." So anyway, you get the idea. The mode of goodness is explained in these verses in the 17th and 18th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. So, basically, if someone lives in the mode of goodness, first of all, you have to understand what it is, right? And this is a clear explanation of it in Bhagavad Gita. Then, most of the miseries of life go away. Miseries and anxieties, and things like that. And one is most of the time happy, and they're no longer they're very regulated in their lifestyle. Eating, sleeping, mating, defending are all regulated according to the rules of Krishna consciousness. And therefore, they're not harassed by the laws of nature. They're free of the laws of nature, or of infringing on the laws of nature, and therefore they're happy, they're creative, they're positive, and they're being very much protected by the mercy of Krishna. It's still not transcendental goodness, but it's getting close. The stricter they follow of regulated life, and it's the stepping stone to this higher transcendental state, which is called pure Krishna consciousness, or transcendental goodness. So the idea is to help the general population to understand and hopefully aspire to live in the mode of goodness, because only in the mode of goodness can people understand higher order spiritual concepts. They can't understand it at all in the mode of ignorance. And they can maybe understand very little bit, but not very much, in the mode of passion. But in mode of goodness, they can really begin to start understanding Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, and so forth. So, if we can build up a coalition of goodness, that is, getting people, it's because if we explain it like this, based on, not you have to surrender to Krishna, but based on, these are the laws of material nature, and these are the description of how to live in the mode of goodness. And the benefits are so good that only a crazy person would refuse to do it. And we're not saying you have to change your religion. We're not saying you have to convert to be a Hare Krishna or even chant Hare Krishna. We're just saying, let's learn about what the real laws of material nature are. Let's not be misled by like people like the Pope and others, they eat meat. Because the dietary things, there's diet in the mode of goodness, diet in the mode of passion, diet in the mode of ignorance. So it's all encompassing the mode of goodness, the explanation of it. And when people begin to understand it, they realize, I would live a much better life if I lived always in the mode of goodness. And we avoid all these arguments and anger and envy and madness and jealousy, all that stuff. Become free of it and live a happy and productive life. And if one wants to go further, then they're poised to go further and come to transcendental life. But if we start talking about transcendental life right away and all the rules and regulations that Krishna consciousness, nobody's going to accept it, or very few people are going to accept it. But if we talk about this gradual elevation to at least the mode of goodness, then you'll have a whole bunch of people who are eligible to go further to Krishna consciousness. And in the least, you bring people to the mode of goodness, and they cooperate, and they feel inspired because they want to teach this to their kids also, and so this could, be a progressive, positive thing for society. Otherwise, the people get duped by, war, publicity. We must go to war. It's absolutely necessary right now, and we must have sense gratification. That's the goal of life. And we must, work really hard and make a lot of money, because then we can have a lot of sense gratification. That would all stop. That would all stop, and people would be much more realistic about, wait a minute, I have all these assets, this intelligence, this mind, and these senses. How should I use them? What's the purpose of life? Right? They would be able to talk about significant things like that, and then they'd be primed to hear answers by bona fide devotees. So, there are these two booklets that I've written. One is the Dance for Peace and Social Harmony. The other one is Life's Problems and Solutions. So we sort of amalgamate them, and this will be the text that we'll distribute for free at Ananda Mela, and then we'll have displays of how to live in a mode of goodness by following apolitical nonviolence for societal change, education in the mode of goodness, food in the mode of goodness, agriculture in the mode of goodness, economics and finance in the mode of goodness, communication in the mode of goodness, meditation for goodness, chanting for goodness, health and diet and so forth, not diet, but health in the mode of goodness, and military in the mode of goodness, social order, organization, meaning Varnashram Dharma in the mode of goodness, and the 26 good qualities that one attains living in the mode of goodness. So these are some of the ideas. I mean, we'll have to develop it, and some of the ideas for displays. So we would be presenting a solution for a sustainable, happy, and peaceful society. That's what we want. And I think everybody wants that. So we would be amalgamating all the good people and all the different religions, even if they're atheists. There are atheists that want to have a good life, right? So we're not against anybody. So that's a general idea. So open to discussion and questions. Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So we are going to do bigger models of just like this, or
Not bigger. It can be like this. Yeah. So someone will be explaining, military for goodness, and someone will be explaining food for goodness, and someone will be explaining economics for goodness, economics and finance for goodness, right? So that means that it'll be all written down in this booklet, but the people who adopt this booth or that booth have to learn themselves how to explain it. Right.
So we captured about 10 to 12 different topics here.
There can be things I missed also.
Yeah. So we'll read the books that are there so that we can.
You can get it on the ISKCON.
Vedic
Cultural Center webpage. Both of these books are there.
So just to kind of put some more understanding from our perspective, Maharaj, so we'll break down in terms of, let's say, 12 to 15 different themes.
Yeah.
And then each one will have some, either one or more of the displays that explain the concept.
Yes.
And then the expectation is that as somewhere in the Ananda Mela, people would be walking through, so that they get
the middle booths where we always have our preaching booth. It'll be this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Vedic village kind of.
Yes, exactly. And see, this is at the end of life's problems and solutions. It's a flow chart. One side is everything that leads to becoming miserable and unhappy, and the other one is everything that leads to become happy and productive.
Yeah,
Right.
I saw that last night.
This is a very, very, very good thing. It took a long time to compile this.
Correct.
So people see what we're aiming at, Yes. Exactly.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, very good idea. I had one question.
Yes.
If the goal is to target anybody who walks in,
Yeah.
how do you, I mean, some of them are atheists, some of them don't believe in God. How do you explain what is the goal of life? Because if that is the catch line, and
Well, we're not going to preach in the sense of, this is Krishna consciousness. We're talking to, only our goal is to help people come up to the mode of goodness. Once they're in the mode of goodness, then you can start bringing up higher order spiritual principles. Okay? But right now, we're concerned now not just with devotees, we're concerned about the whole society and how to help the whole society come up to the mode of goodness, which is the only mode in which you can understand higher order principles of life. Right? If you start right away, you got to chant Hare Krishna and you got to do this, they're just going to walk away. Right?
no, I didn't mean that, Maharaj. What I was asking is, how do you
We're
why
not
should-
talking about the goal of life right now. We're talking about these are the laws of material nature. You can accept them or reject them, but these are the actual laws that are controlling people right now, right? All of us. And these are the three modes of material nature that are controlling our actions. We're not actually free. We're not independent. These things are controlling us. And now, the mode of goodness, although it's controlling our actions, but it can be the stepping stone by which you can go to much higher realizations. But you have to come at least to the mode of goodness to get to that, if you want to go farther. Or you can just stay in the mode of goodness and you'll have a very good life.
Correct.
Right? You'll avoid most pain and misery and sickness and mental problems and economic problems by living in the mode of goodness. But if you want to go further and have a full solution of the problem of life, you can only do it from the mode of goodness. You're not going to be able to do it from the mode of ignorance or passion, because people are too much attached in those modes. It's in the mode of goodness that you begin to break down these very heavy material attachments.
Got it, Maharaj. So we're going to start with educating them on the laws of material nature and
Yes.
help them understand why they need to act in the mode of goodness first.
Why they can act. Don't say
Why
about
they can, yeah.
they have to, As soon as you use those words, people get scared, right? No, why they can. You're giving them possibilities to improve themselves. And everybody wants to be happy. Everybody wants to be prosperous. Everybody wants to be healthy, right? And they don't want to be in anxiety all the time. So here's a solution for those everyday problems that everybody has, whether they're an atheist or a demon or a believer in God, Yeah.
Obviously, one common thing to get everybody is happiness, but we can even start with the words written in Constitution: life, liberty, and happiness.
Well, that was the theme of this whole Dance for Peace. It was, and life's, let's see, let me see what the introduction says here. Let's see here. Well, in the flow chart, it begins with life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. This is the theme of the Constitution, not the Constitution, but the preamble of the Constitution of the United States. So, if that's the let's say the header, right? So one side explains to you how you can be life. How can you have life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness? Because at the end here it says happy population. And these are all the steps to a happy population. And over here is all the steps to unhappy population. Right? But the theme is life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
So this is also the definition of life according to the Vedic knowledge versus the modern knowledge. I mean, do we want to tackle into like the aspect of what is the definition of life? Because the keywords are still accurate in the life, but the concept
Well,
of
okay.
the spiritual life, and then the same thing with liberty means. Then we can explain the material.
Well, when it says life, liberty, so right away the first point is the proper use of free will, or the misuse of free will. So that's a big subject. We can explain that, right? And then the second step, attachment to spiritual conception. And the second, on the other side, attachment to the material conception. And then third is gradually freed from influence of the three modes of material nature. On the other side, influenced by the three modes of material nature. Right? And then number four is real teachers. And the other side is false teachers. So, I mean, you get a chance at every one of these steps to explain so many things that it's part of Krishna conscious philosophy. But it's under the title of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. In other words, everybody wants to be happy, right? Well, this is the way you could attain sustained happiness throughout all life. And this is what causes all the problems that people have today. Right? So this is very, very detailed. If you look at this flow chart, right? This is for happiness, this is for misery. You have the whole philosophy right there. And so look at it, I mean, look at it very carefully. Right? I won't go over everything right now, but you look at it very carefully. And it gives you a chance at every one of these things to expound the whole philosophy of Krishna consciousness.
So,
Yeah.
question. So basically, yes, our theme is to bring the goal is of this is to bring people to more of goodness, because we are targeting
Yes.
for our generic population. We are not targeting any specific people. So
Because most people, almost the whole population, is living in the modes of passion and ignorance right now.
Yeah.
Rajas and tamas.
So while coming up with this material or for displays and all those things, and while explaining, do you think that we should be refrained from the quotes from our scriptures like Bhagavad Gita or Bhagavatam, or it's okay to include those kind of things for supporting what we are saying? Because when you are saying, how we need to convince people, how do people convince, okay, what you are saying is correct?
Well, yeah, see, our point is to gradually elevate people. So you don't want to give them an overload of information.
Okay.
Right? You want to just gradually help them. So the point is happiness as opposed to misery. So anybody in their right mind says, yeah, I want to be happy. But, are you going to tell me how to be happy? And we said, no. We're going to give you suggestions how to have sustained happiness. That means continual happiness. Because whatever happiness most people have now, when they're talking about sense gratification, of course, is not sustainable. Because it's always punctuated with mishaps and unhappiness and problems. Just like there was an article in the news that said, he said, first there was an economic downturn. Then there was the pandemic. And now there's war. So how much worse can it get? I mean, this is what people have experienced in the last 2 years.
Yeah.
The economic downturn,
Yeah.
the pandemic, and more economic downturn, right? And now there's a war. What else can go wrong? I mean, they're saying, what's the next thing that's going to go wrong? That's what they're saying,
Yeah.
But this has had a series of terrible things that have happened to the whole world. So we're addressing that issue. We're explaining, why these bad things happen and how to avoid them, so that you have sustained happiness. Someone said, well, I'm happy, Yeah, they're happy a little bit, no doubt about it, but it's not sustainable.
Yeah, but why I'm asking, because I might want to put myself in other somebody's shoes, and while asking, so people, we might face people like very materialistic, and they think what you are saying is sustainable. What is your definition of sustainable? How do we like believe that this is going to sustainable? How do you prove that like it's sustainable and this is not going to happen?
Proof is in the pudding, as they say in English. You know, first of all, are you happy? So you can't convince someone else
Correct.
unless you yourself are happy, right? You know, unless your kids are happy, your wife is happy, your life is generally peaceful. So if that's a fact, then you can convince another person. You say, look, I'm an example, you know. Before I used to be in anxiety all the time. You know, now I know how to deal with difficult situations because I go to sleep early, I wake up early. And in other words, I have good habits. I don't stay up late. I don't watch television. I don't go to movies. I'm focused on sustainable happiness. Having a very peaceful life. I don't get angry. I'm no longer, you know, a victim, constant victim of lust, anger, and greed. I live a minimalist life, and I have very nice relationships with my wife, my kids, and now my neighbors and people. And I have the determination to help other people. That's why I'm speaking to you. I'm not trying to tell you what to do. I'm just saying, look, this thing has worked for me. Maybe it will work for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You have to be on that level. You have to do this, you know. Otherwise, you know, you're a demon. No, you don't want to go there. You know. Right. So in other words, if you got something, then you're confident because you got it. Whether that person agrees or doesn't agree, you got something. And if he sees that you actually have this sustainable happiness and you're peaceful and you're productive and you're trying to help others, and you're not trying to force them. You're just giving them suggestions, right? And you've gone to the trouble of all this, and you know if you can't, you know, they say, well, I don't know. Let me look at your book and I'll get back to you. Oh, fine, sir. How much is it? No, you can have it for free. Right? We don't have a pecuniary or economic, let's say, an economic pressing issue that we have to get so much for this so I can give it to you. No, we're giving it away free, right? And we have free prasadam also, and it's a free festival. Right? So you see, do you have are you wearing leather shoes? No, I don't have leather shoes because we don't believe in killing animals. So you got to make sure you don't have leather shoes. No, I got challenged once. You know, so let me look at your shoes. You know? Yeah, right. We're talking about we don't kill animals. So he said, let me see your belt. You know.
I gradually reduced all these things.
Yeah, if you're going to preach, about these things, you got to be careful. People are smart; they're not dumb.
Yeah.
Right? You'll meet someone that's very smart. So, let me see your shoes, man.
Yeah. But I think that's a good suggestion about like you can convince by showing the real condition, like how you see people are changed.
If you got something, that whether that guy accepts it or not doesn't matter because you got it. You're holding on to it. You have a peaceful, happy life. Right? And if they see that, you say, okay, well, look, you're a good representative of what you're talking about. I can see that you're for real. I don't know if I'm going to accept this, but give me your book. I'll look at it. If I have some questions, I'll call you back. All right. We're not trying to sign them up for a discovery course. We're just presenting something, and it's voluntary, and we're not like we don't have this imperative. I got to convince one good person to become a devotee. No.
Maybe as a demonstrating or like along with the whole family would be better rather than an individual person.
Of course.
That will give a different impression.
The
for
wife
a person.
and kids, yes, husband, wife, and kids. Why not? That's why I say if you have something, then, you know, you're there already. Now it's up to other people to think, well, you know, I can't really find anything wrong with these guys, you know, and what they're saying, their message is good, their food is good, they smile, it looks like their family is good. They got something. And I might want to have that same thing. And maybe I can listen to what they're saying. Got it?
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj.
Yes.
Maharaj. So for in the flow chart, for each of the points, so we want to show the problem and also the solution in the display.
Well, the display is, let's not make it too complicated, right?
Okay. Mm-hmm.
The display is normal issues in life and how to bring them up to the mode of goodness. So there's, you know, agriculture for goodness, economics for goodness, finance for goodness, etc.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So we don't want to make it too complicated. We don't want to have an example of each one of these things in these two charts, because otherwise, you know,
Too much.
we'd have to use the whole festival for this. You know? We don't want to go there. We want to, you know, have a sampling, you know, that's somewhat comprehensive, but not completely comprehensive. The book will be completely comprehensive. You know? So we got to do something that we can actually do and not get overwhelmed with it.
So Maharaj, I think one thing, at least we benefit from this, is like clearing some misconceptions, or rather the misdefinitions or wrong definitions of what gives them happiness, or like, for example,
no, why is there misery that follows happiness?
Yes.
Why is it? Because it's a law of nature. They don't know what the laws of nature are. We don't even know what the laws of nature are. We're learning. But you learn what these laws of nature are, you suddenly realize, my God, you know, I got to know this stuff, because that's why, you know, I've been getting in trouble. That's why I have trouble in my relationships. That's why I have trouble at work. That's why I have trouble. I'm full of anxiety all the time. And
so maybe educating, I think you're hitting on the right point, which is, you know, if people can accept the laws of nature.
If they can, yeah.
If they can, then the solutions, they will be bought into it.
Yeah, it's law, right? Like we have to accept the laws of, you know, the route, you know, how to drive.
Correct.
We have to accept the laws about income tax. We have to accept this law and that law, right? But there's another set of laws that we don't even know about that are affecting us.
Correct.
We're going to be telling them, we're going to areas that they have never thought about. They didn't know that misery accompanies sense gratification. They didn't know that. And it's going to be hard for them to accept such a concept. But they accept it because they see it happening. Look how much divorce there is in the country, and look at how much violence there is in the country. I mean, why is all this happening when this is supposed to be the greatest country in the world and the richest country in the world?
So
The richest country in the world, they have homelessness, you know, all over the place now.
Correct. I think maybe just getting some of those data points to bring to justify in their mind. Because if we generally say, let's say one of the...
No, but things are going wrong, see? First there's the economic downturn, then there's the pandemic, now there's a war. What's
Correct.
next? You see, they're seeing that all these things are happening, and you know, it's not supposed to happen. Go ahead.
Yeah, and just to connect, so that it becomes surreal for them to experience, and when we connect, like just as you're describing, I'm just visualizing that somehow they go through this experience of, you know, booth after booth, like they're, let's say, it's not like I'm talking about the entire Ananda Mela, but let's say we have 15 steps. They go through every step. One part of it they're accepting, okay, I agree with the principle, everybody wants to be
Happy.
Life, you know, liberty and happiness, you know, everybody wants happiness. Okay, but then the next thing is, what is the real definition of happiness, or who is controlling our happiness? or what is controlling our happiness? Maybe.
No, what is subverting our happiness?
What is subverting our happiness?
Not who's controlling our happiness. What is subverting?
Exactly.
And it's only ignorance. It's only ignorance.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
They don't understand that, you eat meat, you're going to suffer. They think, it's necessary to eat meat to have. There's this one lady, she's on this campaign all over the country now, trying to convince people it's absolutely necessary to eat meat. All these vegans and vegetarians, they're nonsense, they're subverting the health of the American people.
Yes.
So we have to explain, we have to, give people, you're taking them to areas they haven't gone to before because they think it's normal to eat meat.
Yeah, they don't even question. I mean, most of the times, unless we present it in a way that, why is that the wrong thing? Because people just like, many times they don't think, and we never thought until we were probed to, or pointed to a data point that questions our assumption.
Right.
So I think we'll need to bring some of these data points that historically.
But you don't want to go too heavy, right? You want to. I don't mean to remain superficial, but you don't want to be too heavy because you're dealing with a vast number of people that are diverse in the Nanda Mela, right? There's like 20, 30,000 people come. So all kinds of people are walking in and out. So, we want to, if they see you have something, and they're sure that you have found something really good, they're going to be interested. So you have to be psychologically clear.
So our biggest
yourself.
display, then our biggest display is the happy families.
Yes, that's the strongest, attraction.
Displaying ourselves.
Yeah.
Presenting ourselves.
If you got something, they can't argue with it. And I mean, whether they accept it or not, that's still up to them. But if they see you have found something and it works for you and it's good for your kids and it's good for your family, they're going to be impressed. They're going to be impressed by it. And they'll try and get you to get angry or say something to try and irk you, But if you stay, unfazed by their forays of making you upset, So, I mean, you're open to the public, so anything can happen. So that's why you have to not be overly adamant. Everybody has free will. They can accept or they can reject. But if you present something really impelling and nice and good, there's nothing bad about it. It's going to be hard for them to just walk away and say, oh, everything they said was nonsense. No. They're going to walk away and say, well, everything they said makes sense, but I might not be ready to follow this. But and they got it all written down here, and wow, they put a lot of work into this. And they're only talking about a happy population, happy people. So this is what people want, actually. We're not trying to sell something that they don't want.
Yesterday there was some quote shared by somebody that Prabhupada. I'm just trying to see if we can find that. But it.
So Maharaj, maybe we can put some display or the posters with the law of karma, law of natures, though they cannot deny.
Well, no, it's
just to
it's
for the
not something
talking point.
You can't. People will always deny things, maybe.
Yes, but in general, for whoever is standing in front of displays, because there will be many volunteers. So if all volunteers are on the same page, it is easy to communicate the same thing. Otherwise, there will be mix and match of what other volunteers are talking and.
Well, look, this is the main thing.
Yes.
This is the main thing.
Just to standardize, if you can display and.
But we'll add. I mean, we'll add a section about the laws of nature. That's not here yet. But this is the main thing. This is hard to argue with this because
Yes.
they might, in the middle part, they might argue because it says path to sustained happiness, compassion and mercy for all species, truthfulness, austerity, cleanliness of body and mind. And then after that, it's spiritual values based on scriptural authority. So, you're getting into Krishna consciousness in the lower parts here. So they might reject that, you don't know. We have to put it down anyway because it's necessary, if you want to really be happy.
And for this chart also, Maharaj, maybe we can print in a bigger
Yeah, definitely,
scale.
no.
And
We had this when you weren't here at that time. We had a big chart, gigantic chart, and everyone was looking at it, So, yeah. And it'll be in the book also. Any other questions? Okay, so now how do we do, okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, how do we operationalize?
How do we do it? Yeah. Well, first of all, acquaint yourself with the charts and with the two little booklets, and then we'll divide up the work. Somebody's in charge of education, for goodness. Someone's in charge of, economics and finance, for goodness. Someone's in charge of something else, And then you start working on the displays, right? So, and then we keep coming back to maybe reading together the whole booklet. I have to rewrite some things. I'm going to work on it starting now, and then we get a definitive booklet, and then we can get suggestions. Maybe something should be changed, or we have to add something. So this is a work in progress with everybody involved in it. Okay. So now, main thing, go on our webpage. It's going to find these two booklets and see if you can peruse them or read them carefully, and then see which one of the displays you'd like to be involved with. And then next week we'll start discussing more specifically the division of the tasks. Okay? And any suggestions you may have. Think about it. It's amazing when you think about something, you come up with very good ideas. Put yourself in the position of someone that doesn't know anything about Krishna consciousness, and they just walk in and there's this display and there's smiling people and there's happy kids playing, and they say, what's going on here, You have to plan, you have to psychologically plan this thing so that it's going to be very attractive for the people. Already the Vedic village is an attractive thing, We have a lot of different nice displays there. But this is going to be a little bit different. But the attractiveness of it has to be emphasized. The artistic and thematic attractiveness, and then the actual people, the families, that has to be put together in such a way that anybody who walks in right away, they say, this is different. There's something going on here. I better stick around and find out what this is. Like yesterday, I was in Arlington. We had to go to this supply store for some farm things. And I saw this one shop. They had, actually Arlington has like really progressive downtown. It's a small downtown, but it's very progressive. And there was this one shop, I couldn't figure out what it was. They had these very colorful hand-painted things on their windows. But when I looked in the shop, I couldn't see they were selling anything. I was trying to figure out. I didn't have time also to go in and talk to them. But I got interested because they had these beautiful murals on their windows. Very colorful, one of them was, in God we trust, and there's something else in it. I was thinking it's got to have something to do with religion or yoga or something, But I got attracted to that shop. Now, all the shops in their downtown are very colorful and they look upscale, right? They have a really nice small downtown in Arlington, and they had some really nice restaurants also, and it was a little bit in the beginning of nighttime, so everything was lit up with lights. It looked like Christmas. So that was very interesting. So you see lighting, displays, art, culture, happy people, happy children. It attracts people naturally. You don't have to, that makes them curious. And what's going on here, So that's the type of atmosphere we want to create. Haribol.
Two books, so I can take a picture.